Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today is Miss Noemi Beres. She is the co-founder of Podcast Connections, but she is also an artist. She is best known for her unique and witty mixed media hand-sewn collages on canvases made from old photos, postcards, colorful yarn, textiles, and old buttons. She had a group exhibition in Italy and Cyprus. She collects small bits of pieces she finds fascinating and incorporates them into mixed media collages. They usually have a vintage vibe. She sews her memories together. She is happy to discuss how art helps her cope with grief and stress in changing the world. Let's get into the conversation now.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Naomi. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Hello. Good morning to you, Tina. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. So where are you at right now?
I am actually visiting right now my mom in Hungary in Central Europe, but
Okay.
I usually live in Cyprus. So yeah, it's a bit like 2.5, 3 hours flight from there. So
Okay. So are you there with family or did you go solo?
no, we're just visiting with family. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for taking time and visiting to talk with us. I appreciate that. And I wanted to have this conversation for a couple of different reasons and bring you to the widowhood. One, the business that you do, I think it can be intriguing for someone as their life has shifted and trying to figure out what to do. People are looking for different things to do. They may want to tell their story. They may want to go into business for themselves. And I think you have a lot to add to that. Some things you do with the art and then your own personal journey. And I just thought it would be a really good conversation to highlight to the widowhood. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me today. I'm happy to share my story with you.
Okay, so let's share a little bit of your story. I know you said you live in Cyprus, but like, where did you grow up? Before we jump into we don't want to just get to the good part. We want to get to the parts of how you became who you are.
Right. I was born and raised here in Hungary, in Central Europe, in this small town. Actually, I'm right here right now.
Aww.
And yeah, I went to school. I went to high school here. Then I went to Budapest, to the capital, to finish my studies. And I have a master's degree in Danish linguistic history literature. So basically, I'm a linguist by trade.
Okay.
And yeah, but then I'm going to celebrate my 20 years anniversary next year that I moved abroad from Hungary. So I didn't live much time in Hungary, actually, because first I moved to Ireland and lived there for 7 years, then to Cyprus with my family. And it's been 12 years and counting now. So it's a long time.
That's a lot. You just like put everything there, like right there. I'm not sure which question to ask and where to go. What is it now? The space you're in right now, and you said you grew up in Hungary. What is the space you're in now compared to your upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, like the space I am in Cyprus.
Yeah, literally the room place you're in. Yeah,
right now. I mean, this is actually my childhood's room. So this was my place where I was doing my studies and doing my art and dreaming about life and who I'm going to become when I become older. Yeah, so it's always special to come back home and just walking, down on memory lane. And the other day I was biking. I like to exercise. And I love biking too. It's a nice flat area where I live, so it's beautiful. But then I just visited my old school. I saw the old places where I went to when I was a kid, and it's an interesting feeling to always to come back home, and it's a nice feeling, mixed emotions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking. So we are recording a podcast. in the room that you grew up, as you just mentioned, dreaming of who you would become. And now you have become. What does that look like to see how the dreams have developed and manifested over time and struggles of life and complications? How do you feel about that space?
It's so interesting because I remember one summer I visited home. I found one of my diaries, my journals, and that was pretty interesting because I didn't remember that I wrote that down, but actually I wrote about that I would love to live in Ireland, and I would love to live in that beautiful place because that's my dream place to be and everything. And I completely forget about that statement that I manifested when I was about, like, I don't know, 15, 16, found this journal. And I was amazed. It's like, okay, I was living my dream back in Ireland for 7 years because that's what I manifested when I was 15. So that was pretty interesting. And yeah, and I think despite the fact that I went through a lot of trauma, and a lot of hardship in the past years, I still feel that I always got what I wanted from the universe, and I asked from the universe. And this is a great feeling because I think I reached everything I wanted to reach when I was 15, 16. So I think I'm at a good place right now. So I'm happy with it.
Thank you. I want to unpack that a little bit, and I want to relate it also to our community. A couple of things that you mentioned. One, the power of a journal, the power of dreaming, because oftentimes people that are connecting to this podcast, their dreams have been dashed in the death of their loved one. And I want to connect that to the trauma that, and I know that it doesn't equate, but it does connect. So the dreaming, the trauma that happened from the dream that was for you in that journal, the trauma that happened to life, and then actually it coming to manifest. And how I want our listeners to take that information in. I understand life as you knew it has been destroyed. It is literally just shattered. And you're talking about a dream that can be so far removed in the initial parts, as long as it lasts in grief, to start thinking that I could dream again. So I want to encourage the widowhood to just consider a journal. Consider writing out the good, the bad, the things you may slightly hope for or feel like a dream is dashed, and consider it as something that you're watering that could grow in time. And even though what you thought was going to be may no longer be, but there's an opportunity for something different. So as we have this conversation, I just want them to be able to resonate with that and get a connection, not equal, but just see the concept of it. So thank you for allowing me to explain a little bit of that. If you don't mind talking about the trauma. So young Noemi writes this in a journal, and then what happens in life before we actually get to Ireland?
Actually, everything was happened when I was in Cyprus. So that was later in my life.
Yes.
Although I lost many people in my life. You're actually right, because there's many things happened before Ireland too. Yes. You're right there. And like, I lost my grandfather to cancer. So that was like the first step in my life. That was the first biggest trauma. And before that, I lost both of my grandparents from my mom's side. And they just left us like in a month time when I was 6, 7 years old. So that was very early for me. So I lost all of my grandparents at quite an early age. And then just fast forward the time, and everything has happened. And before COVID, because my dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. And that was basically, it's like kind of a death sentence to our family, because we knew from the beginning this is not curable. The doctors stated it. We tried all kind of alternative medicines, and it didn't help. So in 2019 he passed away. Then my grandma, his mother, passed away due to an accident the same year. So, and then COVID started, and I lost one of my good friends to cancer during COVID. So there's a lot of death happening around me and a lot of trauma. So as you mentioned that your dreams get shattered by these painful experiences, they did. And for a couple of years after that, especially during COVID time, I felt that I have no dreams anymore. So I was just like existing, and everything was just gone out of the roof. It's like, what is going to happen, and how am I going to survive this? Because there was so much pain. But my mom is my rock.
You
Sorry,
say pain. What I want, if it's possible, if you didn't use the word pain, how would you describe some of your grief journey or what that looked like how it really showed up. And I'll give, for example, for me, I couldn't think. It was very foggy in my mind. It felt like I was moving in slow motion, or maybe I felt just existing like in a fog, like a zombie kind of. If you were to take an easy word like pain out, how would you express some of those experiences for you?
I was kind of emotionless. I just didn't feel anything. And I didn't see my future, I was just there and doing my tasks, day-to-day tasks. I had to obviously support my mom. I have to raise my son. And I just did everything. Like I took small taps just to survive, despite the fact of my anxiety and everything was going on, behind the surface. Plus, I had to start a new business because of COVID. Thanks to COVID, my business stopped completely. So I had to figure out to find a livelihood in my life. So that was a big shock again. It's like after all this death and trauma happened, and my business stopped. And yeah, so you had to figure out in the meantime what to do, how to earn money. And that's when podcast agency came into the picture. But yeah, that was the thing. It's like emotion, back to your question, is like emotionless, just focusing on my work, on my task, and not to feel anything and just exist.
So thank you for explaining that. How did you come to the concept of dealing with the grief? What were tools that proved helpful for you in that process?
First of all, my family. That's very important. I think whenever you're experiencing grief in your life, the support of your family is just super important. So like together with my mom, she's my rock. So I could always talk about like grief, and we try to cope with grief together. And I think it was good because we supported each other like mutually. The other thing that helped me, the second, was art, because I was always an artist since I was a teenager. So I was always did something with painting, drawing, jewelry making, anything. And for me right now, in like since 2012, sorry, when my son was born, I started making collages. And collage making for me is very like a deep and emotional process when I make them. And I discovered that during my grief process, that's like, okay, I have to go back to art, because art can help me to say the unsaid, because I couldn't express it with words, but I could express it on a canvas. So my collages that I did those days were really, really dark. Those were like mainly digital collages. I didn't have the patience to do like more, but digital collages were different, and it was dark and black and everything. So I wasn't in a nice place, but it doesn't really matter, because those collages helped me to express my pain, my anxiety, and they helped me to cope.
I love that, because and I don't use that word a lot, love. And I take it intensely, because one of the things that you said, you could not express with words how you felt, but you needed to get it out. So that expression, and then also that you went back to something that you knew you enjoyed in your youth. So there can be things that we can't express in our grief, but we can go back to something that we know that was familiar to us in a different season of our life and work that out. That could be dancing. It could be listening to music. It could be going for a walk. It could be entertaining photography, taking pictures and doing things. But that hurt, that loss, that deep grief for that person, if we address it and find some way to deal with it, it serves us well. And that's what I hear out of what you're seeing with the artwork. I'm not an artist, so we don't want Tina doing any collages or doing any of that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm going to do. For me, it was talking. It was talking to whoever would listen, friends, family. That was my way. And Reginald Lockhart, therapist, counselor, and resident, said, grief is like fingerprints. It's different for everyone. And once we give ourselves permission to realize that, we don't have to mimic somebody else, but we can take our grief and be able to express it based on what we're dealing with. So thank you for mentioning that.
Also, I mentioned, Tina, that like music, that's also a good point, because I got a very unique instrument from my mom for my 40th birthday. And that was a handpan, which has a beautiful sound. And I really enjoyed it. And I always wanted it. So my mom, to cheer me up, because my dad couldn't be with us when I celebrated my 40th birthday, I got this beautiful instrument from my mom. And so I started to play on it. So music also plays an important part in my life. And since then I have a frame drum, a tongue drum. So I love drums. And yeah, it doesn't really matter what you do. Just you have to express these deep down these feelings somehow in some way. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
That is absolutely true. Thank you. And so now COVID, and that impacts you not just, and just in a whole way, people that you're losing what was familiar, your lifestyle, the pressure of economics and trying to survive. How did you and your husband sort through that and come to a conclusion what to do? Because I know a lot of people are still trying to rebalance themselves after coming out of COVID.
I mean, thankfully, we had a mentor, an Irish guy who helped us to basically discover this whole world of podcasting, and he advised us to start something in this niche. And it was like a very great, probably the biggest but the best decision we ever made. We just jumped into it. I didn't listen to podcasts before 2020. I have to be honest. So I'm not going to, because in Europe, it's still not a big of a deal to listen to podcasts. Many of my family members and friends, they don't even know what a podcast is. So it's like we are a bit behind.
Like right now?
Right now, I'm talking about right now, like friends, they ask me, and they are not like, they're very well-educated, well-versed people. And it's like, what is a podcast? And what do you do? And it's like, okay, so you have to explain that. So I didn't know that either. So
so hold on for a second. So where are you seeing the biggest areas of podcasting taking place now that you mentioned it? And thank you for educating us on that.
It's definitely US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So it's not our part of the world. Europe is improving. I mean, we're getting there, but we're still not there. So it's a lot to catch up with the US.
But also, I hear a lot of opportunity in your area to be able to be in the beginning of this and make that a platform where you are known and the subject matter expert for that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Nice. Okay, so this Irishman gives you guys an idea. And where do you go from it? And I want to circle back that having a mentor, having that outside voice, because the things that you're thinking, to have someone to help flush that out and develop those ideas, that's something else I want the widowhood community to think about as they're considering new ventures, to not just go out there on their own, to maybe get input from a professional, because that can be helpful. So what do you take from this information they provide, and where do you go from there?
Okay, we had a couple of days. My husband made a website during one night, and next day he told me, okay, so we're starting this podcast agency. I said, okay, let's do it. I mean, I love communication. I'm pretty creative. So, okay, let's start to reach out to people and get them on board. So we started to work with e-commerce experts in the e-commerce niche, especially female entrepreneurs, because they are not overvalued in that niche either. So we need more women in e-commerce niche too. So we started to work with them with just a handful, because our agency is still a boutique agency. So we focus on that part, that element, that personal touch, and those tailored interviews, and like the close connection with our clients. So that's how we started. And it was fun, and it was scary, and it was a learning curve. And, I just learned as we went along the way, but it was definitely a very, very important part of my life, because it's changed a lot. I was always in the background before. I was doing content creation, blog writing, social media. So it's like, you were always in the background. But right now I'm kind of the face of our company, and I'm doing interviews like today. So it's fun, and I really enjoy that part. And I'm just, I'm networking plays a very important part in my life and business. And now I'm just discovering these incredible, awesome people around me, and especially from the US. So many friends and mentors and colleagues, and I'm just so overwhelmed by all these people, and the relationship I have with them, and friends from all over the world. So yeah, it was a huge opportunity, and this is all thanks to COVID. So it's like good and bad things happen because of that, but we came out good.
So you said scary. Thank you. Because sometimes when you're scared of something, it prevents you from moving forward. That fear and that anxiety. How did you address that fear and that scary part and still persevere, maybe when the clients weren't coming and things were not developing or happening in those low moments? And that's helpful for someone that may be starting a new business in this season, and how to plot that out. And how did that look for you in your scenario?
That's a great question, Tina. Thank you. I completely forgot about it. I didn't want to focus in. I just focused on just to set this business up, get this business going, and focus on how we can work this out and how we can, make money. And because that's also important. We would lie if we would tell it's like, no, we just do it for fun. No, it's not. It's your livelihood, it's your life, paying your bills and everything. So I just focused on, I can be laser focused if I want something. So I didn't concentrate on anything, no imposter syndrome, nothing. Because I had to just shut everything out and focus on this business get going, because our everything depended on it. So I didn't have any other choice. So I was just pushed into it, and let's do it.
And that makes a lot of sense, because talking to different people on this grief journey, a spouse may have died and they find themselves, they were not having to work, and now they have to get a job because it is literally their livelihood. The fear and anxiety sometimes is something we just have to put in the back because we have to do. And sometimes there are people that the depression is so heavy. And it's like, if I don't find some way to deal with this, I'm going to be lost right here. So I have to push past. The fear is there. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be right there.
Yeah.
So the best I can do is just take the steps that other people have done that have proven to success, and just keep working through that until I start seeing those wins and what that looks like.
Right. So true.
So what have been some interesting clients that you've worked with over the years in doing this?
Oh, I still have those interesting clients. And we have a wide spectrum that we cover and a lot of niches we cover. But I specifically love working with healers and my kind of people, woo-woo people, as we call them. And there's no offense or anything like that, because I love anything that related to woo-woo stuff in life. And they light me up, and they have so many interesting topics. Like one of my clients, it talks about, like, she's an animal healer. My other client is a quantum energy expert. So it's so many interesting stuff. Plus, you learn so much about the world and about different niches, different topics during your journey and during your job with these amazing clients, that they light me up, because I love learning, and I can learn something new from them every day. And you learn all the time when you go on podcast interviews, because during these conversations we also learn a lot from you, from other hosts. So
So on your LinkedIn, you recently posted something, and forgive me for not having it exactly correct. And it was something about well-being, showing up authentically. Do you remember which post I'm talking about? No makeup.
I think so. I think so.
Expand a little bit on that, and what was the genesis of that conversation?
But it's about, like, practicing self-care and sticking to your routines, because that's doesn't only apply in your work, and doesn't only apply in doing exercises and being healthy, but it also applies how you do business and how you do life. That's really important as well. Everything is connected. So if your body and soul are not healthy, your business and your relationship with your clients are not going to be healthy either. So you have to focus on, and consistency in everything what is do. That's always my keyword in life, and consistency and persistency, because if you stick to your rules, stick to your routines in your exercise and life, in business, that will bring you the results in. You just have to be persistent and consistent by doing them.
And I wanted to mention that because when someone close to you dies, everything in life is just helter-skelter. But there's some comfort and safety, it feels like, if you can establish some routines.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's creating some type of sense of normalcy in life. So if you're able to say, okay, I'm going to go for a walk once or twice a week, and giving yourself something to look forward to, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to watch a show, something to create some sense of self-care, because the stress that the body engages in grief is pretty immense, where your health can be depleted in different things that you're experiencing. So that conversation that you had, I could see it being implied in so many different areas of a person's life, not just related to work.
Right. So important. Because I had this routine when I was going through my tough time and COVID started. So everything was going on. My grieving process I was really low and down. And then So I started to do my collages every single evening. And then I put my earplugs in and I was listening to my favorite audiobooks. So I was listening to audiobooks, doing my collages, and it was just so uplifting and relaxing and refreshing. Like I was looking for that moment. I was looking for that time of the day that, yes, I can just relax, because art can be so therapeutic when you do it. It's some kind of, I do meditate as well, like normal meditation, but for me collage making is also a form of meditation because it relaxes your soul, your body, and it actually has been proven by medical research that the creation of art, basically it increases the serotonin level in your brain that would help with depression as well, and so many things. So it's kind of a meditative state when you do art, or when you draw, or when you crochet, or anything. You don't have to be an artist to do that. You just start something.
So talk about the meditation a little bit. What does that look like for you?
I'm doing guided meditation every day in the morning. And if I don't fall asleep during meditation, in the evening too, but that happens often. So oftentimes I fall asleep, but not in the morning. So in the morning, I do two types of meditation, kind of like a law of attraction meditation. And the other one is like, both of them are kind of law of attraction meditations. And I really enjoy that. And I miss it if I skip it, and I don't want to miss it. So I really stick to my rules and routines. One of my friends told me that you can really stick to your routines. Like, yeah, I'm kind of like a Scorpio. I love my routines. So, but it's I can feel the beneficial effects on me.
And that's what I wanted to hear.
It.
What did you feel like the benefit of before you started meditating and then doing it, and then when you miss it? If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. I feel more relaxed, obviously. And if you do like a morning meditation, your day has just a better start. You are in a different frequency and different energy level when you start with meditation, because you focus on the good things and not on the good things that, oh, that's not going to happen, or just the bad things. Plus, it's also good for my meditative state that I never watch the news. I never read the news, not in the morning, and I don't do that anyway. So I just focus on these things and things that light me up, basically.
Oh, two things I want to talk about. One, thank you for that. One, the audiobook. Oh my gosh, that is so huge, because in the fog of grief, it's hard to concentrate. It's hard to focus on the words on a page. It's hard to take in what's being said because your mind just starts racing. So the idea of audiobooks, I think, is such a wonderful idea, because I don't have to worry about being stationary. I can listen to an audible book, whatever I'm doing, and it can sort of capture my mind and allow me to disconnect from what I may be laser focused on, and to sort of take a mental vacation and go here, go there by the audiobook. So thank you for mentioning that. And then also finding what lights us up. It may take different things before we find. Were there some things you tried that you found didn't light you up?
I didn't really have anything, because I don't know, I just figured out for myself that I need these things to light me up, or but I didn't have specifically, or like I can talk about what lights me up, like watching like a stand-up comedian on YouTube or Netflix, because I knew that I had Googled it one stage at at one point of my life when I was really low, and it's like, okay, how can I be happier? And it's like, how can I be happier? Google.
But that's
and
for
it's like,
real though. When you're in a really, Google has some answers out there.
Exactly.
It's
and
like,
now we have
ChatGPT,
so it's even better.
That. Yeah. And it's like, okay, let me consider, because I'm in an unknown place. I don't know how to get out of where I'm at. So I need some suggestions. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I tried, and they always told you, that's like, okay, every article I found, or everything I found in the internet, they told me, it's like, watch some shows, watch your favorite stand-up comedians, because laugh is the best medicine, as they say. So, and it definitely helped me. Or watching like Netflix shows, just like very easygoing, nothing complicated shows, for example, on Netflix. And some people think it's a time-wasting stuff, but when you're really low and when you're really down and you're in blue, you just need something to light you up, and it doesn't matter what it is, you still have to use it. And it helped me as well. So I stick to my favorite shows on Netflix. I listen to my audiobooks and just being out in nature or walking on the beach. It's a nature exercise that's also helpful when you need some support. Stick to your exercise routines as well.
Thank you for mentioning that. And I want to circle back to a couple of things. When my late husband died, there were shows that we watched before together that were too painful to initially watch in his absence. So I want to just talk about that over time, a couple of things I found happened for me. One, initially did not want to watch those shows. So it was like I wasn't even going to bring myself. And I had to find new shows that I enjoyed that we did not watch together in time. And for me, 2, 3 years later, where I could actually like, hang on, I haven't watched that show since Mark died, but I really want to know what happened. And I was able to watch it and then think about the times when we watched it together. And it's interesting to think about losing a spouse. They are so intertwined in every aspect of your life that many people don't consider how the death of my spouse impacts everything. Like, this is a grocery store. We used to always go grocery. This is the road that I would drive to drop them off at work. That everything is impacted by their absence. So thank you for talking about the shows to give me an opportunity to speak about that. So even with the outdoor nature, you may have to find a different park to go to because you and your spouse always went to that location. We always went for a walk after dinner. What does that look like when every sliver of your life is impacted? So you have to literally sometimes re-event what you're going to do in comparison to what you did. So when you hear the term new normal, it's like everything I used to do does not fit in this space without them. I have to figure out what that looks like, this life now in their absence. And that's why it's so draining. So the idea of what lights you up is so critical to find out, because everything that lit me up before probably has something to do with that spouse or that child or that close family member that died, and trying to identify what life looked like.
Yeah, for example, I couldn't listen to music for a couple of months after my dad passed away. I just couldn't cope with it. And I just, after a couple of months, then because I love music, it's part of my life. And like every day I listen to music if I can, and I just couldn't do it. But then after a while, I was patient with myself. I took my time. And then I rediscovered the beauty of music. But I still can't watch movies about cancer or people talking about cancer, or it's like still deep in me. So I just can't really cope with it, or anything very emotional music, very emotional stuff in movies. And I had to be really careful at the beginning. Right now, I'm at a better place, but still, I have to be careful with it.
Thank you, because that's fair. And the desire and how that changes and touches you is important. And it's hard because you look normal to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You look like the same Noemi that they knew before. So to understand this is different. Now, I know you spoke about communicating that with your mom. Were there other people that you had to share how you were feeling, what you were going through in your grief? And what did those conversations look like?
Probably a couple of my close friends knew about my struggles, but I don't really open up to people about my struggles.
And here you are on a whole podcast talking about it. Okay.
Now, yes, but before that, I didn't do that.
Oh, so in the moment of the grief, you did not. Okay.
No, I did not. I did not, because now, like 4 years passed, and some time gone. So I'm coping, and I'm getting being in a better place. But after that, it was hard. And the other thing is that people still treat it as a taboo when they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to touch the topic because, it might be painful for you. And it's just too hurtful for them too. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to approach you about it. So they just don't talk about it. So they treat it as a taboo, and they just leave you with it. And it's like, okay, she's going to be fine or whatever. But it's not like that. It's just so much more complicated and deeper than that. So to be honest, I couldn't really talk to my friends about it. They knew about it. And probably one of my closest friends, I could talk about it. She also passed away a couple of years ago because of cancer. So, yeah. And it's not easy to talk about with friends or family members because they think it's just a sensitive topic to talk about, to discuss.
Thank you. A couple of things you said there that are so important. In that place of the grief, it was so hard to talk to people that were friends. And that is hard for people to comprehend. Like, these are friends. Why can I not have this conversation? But it feels like sometimes something is just stuck in your throat. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the challenge of exposing yourself emotionally, being so transparent, and realizing that people don't know what to say, because I think it'll happen like the first time you may share with somebody and then they give you this deer in the headlight look and you're like, well, I'm not going to do that again because I don't want to. It was hard enough to share that, let alone someone not knowing how to respond. Being where you are now in your grief, and what advice would you give to someone that had a friend that was grieving, what they could say or do or how they should show up now what you've experienced?
Just listen to them. You don't have to, give any clever advice because obviously you may be not experiencing the same pain and the same hurt as they do. But if you just give them a listening ear and just be patient with them, just sit down with them and just listen to them because they have a lot to say and a lot to share. And if you're patient with them, they might share that with you. And you don't really have to fix their problem. You can't fix their problem. It's not possible. But just listen to them because that's always very important. And that's probably the best advice I can give them.
That is excellent advice because I think we show up, and you mentioned it's too sad for them to be around because they're your friends and they probably want to fix it. They probably want to have this bright statement that's going to make you all better. And nobody has that. I think it's very odd as a society that we are all one day not going to be here, but we don't know how to show up for people when they're going through that grief and losing someone.
Right.
That
So very
it,
true. Yeah.
mhm. Has this experience of losing people you love changed how you showed up in other people's lives that are experiencing grief?
I think so. I think so because I'm more sensitive to that. So I try to listen to people carefully, what they say and what they want to tell me. And I'm kind of an intuitive person. So even if I don't talk to them, I feel their pain. And there are some family members, they're struggling with health issues and everything. And I told my mom, it's like, I feel their pain sometimes, that there's something going through behind the scene and behind the surface, but they don't talk about it. And that's why they get sick. And because they just don't express it anyway, they don't have a coach or they don't have a mentor or they don't have anyone to talk to. They don't do art or they don't exercise. So everything is stuck inside. And when you swept so many things under the carpet, once it gets too much and somehow it will affect your health, your mental, your physical health.
It does, because those things that dis-ease becomes a disease inside of our body if we don't let it out some way. I have another question, circle back to what we just spoke about. So hypothetically speaking, if I was your friend during those times of heavy grief and you were not talking, and I know that your behavior changed, what would have been some things I could have done to maybe pull that out of you or have a conversation to prompt the discussion? I'm a super talkative person, so it's like you wouldn't even have to prompt me. It's like, but from your perspective, knowing yourself, how would you think would have been a good way to approach you?
Just to start to talk to me about it and just to approach me, because I won't approach you to talk about this. Like, hey girl, I want to talk about my grief. Just let's get together, because we won't do that.
Yeah,
So
no one's doing that.
I mean,
I'd like
so
to have a grief tea with you, please. Come on over.
Can I please just chill together and talk about it?
Yes.
No, if you just don't leave them alone. Just like whatever they say, they do. And if you are a real good friend, just be there for them. It's just so important. And don't leave them alone with their struggles and with their pain and with everything going on in their life. Or sometimes maybe they just need, like, bring them like maybe brownies over, or just anything, a gesture or anything, or recommend a book or whatever. Like, hey, I read this book, just check it out, it was so funny. Or I don't know, just cheer them up, light them up a bit, and just be there. You don't have to always talk about death and the grief. Maybe you don't even have to mention it. Just to just to light them up somehow, and eat ice cream together. I don't know if you drink. I don't, but whatever, just have a glass of wine together and watch a movie together, just chill out together, just be there for them. That's so important.
I think thank you. And what you said is key. You feel like you have to talk about the obvious, but that disappearing, that ghosting that person is so loud in that moment when they need. And so if you're just showing up and go, hey, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
If they want to talk about that heavy part, you give them space by being there. And if whatever it is that they like doing, what I hear, if it's food, if it's going to a movie, but just don't disappear because that's going on. That's when your friend needs you the most. That's not where we disappear. We need you to be in that space and just let it be organically.
Right. So important. Or just enjoy the silence together. Anything.
I have
You don't have to talk.
Yes, you can do that because they need to be there. Thank you so much. I know I've asked you a lot of questions. Any questions you have of me?
Now I'm the host.
Yeah, I mean, but there are things sometimes you think like, okay, what are some questions? So I don't want to not make space for that too.
Right. I mean, what was the worst part of your grief process? It's like,
for me, the reality that this man I had spent 32 years with was dead.
Mm.
And the finality of it, that like, wow, like this is how the story ends. Mark and I were on a little mini vacation. He was living in Virginia. I was living in Pennsylvania. He had taken a job there and I was trying to get one with him. And we got together for the weekend. In my mind, I was going to see him in Easter, but I was just prompted to spend time with him that weekend. And I'm glad because we all have an appointed date and time that we will no longer be in this world. And the reality that he died that weekend was shocking. And the idea that I needed to figure out what my life was going to be every second, every moment, and I could never talk to him again. Like this was a person, we were getting into our 50s. We were planning on the children leaving the nest. We're now
Yeah.
going to, hit retirement and having these plans of what life was going to look like. And the instantaneous change, like he wasn't sick. It wasn't something in my mind. I was getting ready for the concept of him dying. We were on vacation. He had a massive heart attack, died that day. And it was like, I couldn't drive, I couldn't think, and all these major decisions that needed to happen in my worst capacity. I am grateful for my family and friends that showed up to carry that immense weight that I could not. I was 3 hours away from where we live. And so now he died. I have both our cars. I have this apartment in Virginia that he lived in. All these things are going through my project management mind, but I don't know how to make a decision or do something. So friends come from Pennsylvania to drive me back, drive my vehicle back, drive his car back, and do that. My brother shows up literally the next day from California, and I'm planning my husband's funeral.
Yeah.
And my children, like the second thing that I was the most difficult was my incapacity to be there for my children. I'm glad my children happen to be adults, so they knew their dad. And I know some people deal with the loss of a spouse with young children, but in my situation, their dad was an adult. And going from my husband and I as a unit doing everything together to now realizing my children are helping me plan their dad's service. And after that was over, we all three of us, I have two children, we kind of ghosted each other. We didn't know. It was like, how do we talk? What do we do? And they went from not only did their dad die, but I didn't have the capacity to show up as they were accustomed to. And it took me a good 6 months before it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not just my husband that's died. It is their dad also.
Yeah.
And how I need to start reeling them back in. I need to get enough mental capacity to start focusing on my children and how I'm supposed to be a mother and what that looked like. And I actually apologized to them later and sorry that I didn't have what it took to show up for them because I was in my own devastation in trying to do that. So those two things, the instantaneous, the finality of his absence, and my incapacity to be there for my children.
That's beautiful. I like that was really nice to share. And can I add something to that about kids? Because I remember the day when we got the call from the hospital because my dad was going through this, very long suffering for 2 years. And I talked about this. This is another topic, maybe for another interview, but like the sudden death or the long suffering death what you experience
Oh
with
no,
family
share your
members.
journey. Go right ahead.
And it was like a long process for me. And when you see your dad, who was like a former basketball player, like strong man and very tall and everything, just becoming this person that you can't even recognize anymore because the cancer took everything away from him and he was weak and small. And it's pretty hurtful to see that process. And I'm not saying it's easier to cope with sudden death because that's just happened. But no,
there is no comparison. You are sharing
exactly.
your journey. Feel free to do that.
So that was the long process that you see something die day by day and losing them day by day. This is like horrible. And with my grandma, it was different. It was sudden, quite sudden, because it happened like in 2 weeks' time, and then she passed away. But with my dad, it was a very long and painful process. But then, just talking about the children, my son. Actually, my dad passed away on my son's 7th birthday. So when I have his birthday, it's always my dad's death anniversary, which makes everything even more complicated because this is like day of joy and day of sorrow. So it's always intertwined in my life. But then you still have to celebrate life, and I still have to celebrate his birthday. But I also remember the day when we got this call from the hospital that my dad passed away, and that was my son's birthday. And my son came to me, and he was 7 only, just like a small child. And he came to me and just turned 7, and he came up with this idea, just let's draw a picture. He told me, I drew a picture. He drew a picture of my dad, and he brought this paper around, brought it to my husband, brought it to my mom, to me, and write down something that you like most about granddad. And we had to write that down. And he was 7. And how wise kids are, because they have the same feelings we have. And he was so shocked when we got this phone call. And obviously we let them know. And he saw how we are in tears and what's going on with us. And and I think he was affected by this whole thing. And he had the courage to come to us. And I didn't have anything on my mind that like, okay, let's draw a picture and then that write something nice about him, what we like most. And we still have that picture, and we framed it, and it's still here in the house. So I was just like, he was 7. He's just a kid. How could he come up with an idea like this? So
that is wonderful. Something we didn't talk about. How has life been different being there for your mom in your dad's absence? How did you see her life shift?
That was a big shift in it because my mom was kind of dependent on my dad in many ways. My mom doesn't like shopping like other women do. And
I am one of those women. I do
too.
not like shopping.
Me
Okay.
too.
Just for the record, I'm encouraging for all you that do, but I'm not on Team Shop for nothing if I don't have to.
No, me neither. If I can, I do online shopping, just a few clicks and I'm fine with it. So I'm not into shopping either. So my mom was really dependent on him. I love that, chatting with people. He loved shopping. He did everything that, just the normal day-to-day tasks that you have to pay the bills and you have to go here and there. So my mom just stayed here alone with everything just covered, and she didn't know she didn't know stuff that she's supposed to know by the age of 60, late 60s. So she basically had to learn everything from scratch stuff to do that. It's pretty hard on her, and to fix things around the house. And because my dad was always there and always helped her, and they lived together like 40 something years during their marriage, so it was a long time. So she had to relearn everything. And what she mentions to me every single time when we come home or when we are on the phone together, that the loneliness, it's everything is just the silence, to cope with silence and cope with loneliness. Because obviously they didn't chat all the time, but they were always together. They was always around, and they did most of the things together. And yeah.
Do you know how your mom's managed that loneliness or that gap? How does she create a different life, or are just being lonely forever?
She loves gardening, and she loves reading. So, and she loves like classical music. So those are her things. She's not a social person anymore. So she doesn't like to gossip or, go around and visit friends or family members. But then garden, that's her everything. So that's
So
what
she found the
relaxes
things that
her.
light her up.
Exactly. She always loved it because she was a kindergarten teacher for 40 years. So when she needed to relax and just get the noise out of her head because the kids are noisy, and she went to her garden. It's a huge garden, and she has like fresh vegetables and fruits and everything in her garden. It's not like a tiny garden; it's a big one.
Oh no, this
But
is like pseudo farm over here. Okay, nice.
kind of, yeah, kind of, and she enjoys that, and that's how she copes with life and grief and silence. Plus,
That
I
is
always call her like twice a day.
nice, nice. But no, to see that upfront and personal, that changes your perspective what life looks like and what to be cherished. That this is a reality. This is what it is. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions for me you have?
Yeah, well, who was your biggest help? It's like friend, or did you have like a special person, a family member, or a very close friend who helped you a lot?
That's a really good question. My faith was my biggest help. When I think about who helped me the most, I be so depending on what time of day it was. So I live in the East Coast now.
Yeah,
I'm one of five siblings. I had two siblings that lived in California at the time. Actually three, different places. So I had somebody in a different time zone, which was really helpful. Then I had
yeah,
another sister that lives in Chicago. So the one in Chicago was an hour difference, and the three in California were 3 hour difference. So depending on what time it was, I was always reaching out to a different sibling. My faith, my siblings, and then I became conscious, like, am I pouring too much of this wretched situation onto one person? I figured I needed to start evenly dispersing the crazy and the guilt and the pain. So I made sure that I was leveraging different friends. A therapist was huge for me
mm,
to understand how to navigate this life that I have to live. And I remember when we were having children, we had this book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, and you were excitedly
yeah,
reading through of what to do next. And I was like, where's the When Your Spouse Die book? Like, how does that work? Because certainly I'm not the first person out here doing that. And the therapist was helpful in me trying to unpack, to think, just like you were saying about the loneliness your mom experienced, everybody is experiencing that. How do they deal with it? But if I didn't talk or create community, I started connecting with other widows and finding out, like, how are you doing this? So I tried to evenly disperse everything that was going on because I was afraid I would break one person if I literally had
right.
given them all of this. So that wasn't one person, it was just finding out who could fit what space and what was going on and how to navigate through that. Am I answering your question?
Absolutely. Yes, you did. I wish I had a brother or sister because I'm an only child. So I wish I had a brother or sister to talk to about it because obviously you share your grief with them.
Mhm.
And that's also a huge help, I think. Yeah. But
It
you did
is.
answer my question for sure.
It is, and I can definitely say, Noemi, that my experience is from, I should say, from talking and connecting with people that are grieving. My experience is unique in that so many people, their friends go silent. So many people, family members distance themselves in the grief of a loved one. My family and friends, they showed up with like a shovel and a pitchfork, like they're in here, they're not going any
Yeah.
place. And I thought that that's how everybody experienced grief. And in doing this podcast and in these conversations, I have found totally the opposite. So I am so grateful. And I even made new friends in this process where people have a skeleton crew. So I am grateful
Mm,
for that I had enough people to dispense it amongst. But at the same time, there were places where I felt so low, so lonely, even in the midst of everyone else feeling like someone still didn't understand what I
right.
was going through. And one of my friends came and got me out the house. and said, I see what you're doing. You're closing up yourself. You're not talking. So me silent is a big like, whoa, something's wrong.
Yes.
They
I know.
came,
I'm the same.
they came and drugged me out of the house. And I realized I need to go back to therapy because I kind of thought, oh, I got this. And it was like, no, you don't. You need to go back and get help.
Mm,
And I will probably have a therapist my entire life, of just like having a dentist. I need someone to help me manage what is going this head chatter, what's going on in my thought, and not get all caught up in myself. So I have realized that that is something really important for me.
that's so important. Yeah. And once you talk about it, once you open up about it, you write about it or talk about it. Like my coach told me one day that like it opens it up and it helps you to cope with anything and everything, because that's you're not closed off and your walls are not up that high. You're just starting to lower them a bit. And once it's written down and once it's said, it helps you to cope.
Okay. Thank you for this conversation. If you have any other questions of me or final thoughts to wrap us up, I'll let you do that.
Well, I mean, like I have kind of a motto in my life. Whatever happens, horrible things and, life, death, trauma, just keep going. And that was always my motto in life. And you deal with it, but you have to keep going because that's really important.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Tina, for having me today.
Hello, widowhood. Thank you for being here with us through this conversation. Naomi brought something a little bit different to the discussion in so many different ways. One, from being the daughter of a widow, sharing her own grief, expressing and showing how COVID has changed her life and how she had to create something different in a place where so much she had lost. I am certain that this conversation proved helpful for you in many different ways. Please email me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.org, gmail.com, widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. I want you to suggest different topics to discuss. Maybe you want to share your journey, or you have someone you would like for me to make part of the podcast. I am sorry for the person that you have lost that caused you to be in this conversation, but I'm glad that you found us and you're part of our hood. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.